It's 10 p.m. Blank page. Looming deadline. You swore you'd start this morning, but distractions won. Now that familiar knot of anxiety tightens. The self-blame kicks in. Why do I always do this? You know the drill. Frantic scramble, guilt, and the empty promise that next time will be different. That crushing feeling? It's the procrastination cycle. And it's stealing your peace. If you're watching this, you likely feel stuck, battling an invisible force while telling yourself it's just laziness. But what if it's not? What if the real reason you're trapped has everything to do with hidden fears or specific brain triggers you can actually understand and manage? We've synthesized deep insights from psychologists, neuroscientists, and habit experts to decode why we procrastinate and reveal what actually works. No surface-level tips here. Our goal? To take you from feeling powerless, anxious, and trapped to truly understanding the roots of your procrastination, armed with practical strategies, feeling empowered, and finally taking consistent action on what matters. Ready to break free? We'll cover the real reasons, the science, the systems, and the tactics. If procrastination was simply laziness, the endless advice to just do it or try harder would actually work. But for most of us, it doesn't. Why? Because procrastination is rarely about laziness. It runs much deeper than that. Think about it. You're probably not lazy when it comes to things you genuinely enjoy or find easy, right? No. When it comes to those important, daunting tasks, something else is going on. Psychologist Dr. Fiore, in his book The Now Habit, argues that procrastination is fundamentally a coping mechanism. It's your brain's clumsy attempt to deal with the anxiety associated with starting or finishing a task. It's not a character flaw, it's a defense strategy. But what are we defending ourselves against? Often, it boils down to a few core fears. The fear of failure. What if I try my best and it's still not good enough? What if I mess up? This fear hits hard when we tie our self-worth directly to our performance. Fiore points out that even small mistakes can feel like proof of worthlessness, making it terrifying to even start. The fear of imperfection. Perfectionism. This is a big one. We get paralyzed because the finished product in our head is flawless, but the starting point always looks messy and imperfect. We're afraid of criticism, judgment, or simply not meeting our own impossibly high standards. So we avoid starting altogether because an unfinished project can't be judged. The fear of being overwhelmed. Sometimes the task just feels too huge, too complex. We look at the mountain ahead and freeze, unsure where to even begin. Fiore notes this can also link to a fear that success will only lead to more overwhelming expectations. So when you put off that task, you get a temporary reward, relief from that anxiety, that fear. And because it brings relief, even temporarily, the habit gets reinforced. It's a defense mechanism, albeit one that ultimately causes more pain. Author Pressfield takes this idea even further in The War of Art. He gives this internal enemy a name: resistance. He describes it as a universal, invisible, internal force whose sole aim is to stop us from doing our most important work, whether that's creative work, starting a business, getting healthy, or pursuing any meaningful goal. Resistance is insidious. It lies, it rationalizes. You can start tomorrow. You need more research. You're not good enough yet. It's fueled by fear, and its only goal is to keep you from your potential. But here's the fascinating twist Pressfield offers. Resistance can be used as a compass. The more important an action is to your soul's evolution, the more resistance you will feel. That massive dread you feel about starting your passion project, that intense desire to suddenly clean your entire house when you should be writing, that's resistance telling you, this matters, this is the work you need to do. So let's put this together. The real reason you procrastinate often isn't laziness. It's a complex mix of deep-seated fears, of failure, imperfection, overwhelm, creating anxiety that your brain tries to escape. And often, it feels like you're battling an active internal force, resistance, specifically targeting the work that means the most to you. No wonder just do it feels impossible sometimes. You're not just being lazy. You might be facing down deep anxieties or an internal adversary. Recognizing this is the first crucial step. It shifts the frame from self-blame, I'm lazy, to understanding I'm experiencing fear and resistance. So we know it's often fear and resistance holding us back emotionally. But why do we actually choose to scroll social media or suddenly clean the kitchen when that important deadline is looming? Why do we knowingly sabotage ourselves? The answer lies in the fascinating and sometimes frustrating science of our own brains and bodies. First, let's talk about willpower. According to research highlighted by Dr. Kelly McGonigal in The Willpower Instinct, self-control acts remarkably like a muscle. It gets tired. Every time you make a decision, resist a temptation like not checking that notification, or manage your emotions, you draw from a limited pool of willpower. As the day goes on and you make more demands on this muscle, it gets fatigued, making it much harder to tackle difficult tasks later on. This is partly tied to energy. Your brain, especially the self-control center in the prefrontal cortex, needs fuel. When your energy dips, maybe because you skipped a meal, are sleep-deprived, or running on sugary snacks leading to a crash, your brain instinctively conserves energy. And guess what's one of the first things it cuts back on? Costly self-control. It prioritizes immediate survival instincts over long-term goals. Now, add stress into the mix. Remember that anxiety and fear we talked about? That is stress. And biologically, stress is the ultimate enemy of willpower. When you feel stressed or anxious about a task, your brain shifts into fight or flight mode. It floods your system with stress hormones, preparing you for immediate danger. This survival response actively shuts down the thoughtful, long-term planning part of your brain, the very part you need for self-control and tackling complex projects. Instead, it pushes you towards immediate gratification or escape. That's why stress doesn't make you more focused on the task. It makes you crave distraction or avoidance even more intensely. And then there's the dopamine trap. Dopamine is often called the pleasure chemical, but that's not quite right. It's more about the anticipation or promise of reward. Our brains release dopamine when we encounter something novel or potentially rewarding, like a notification alert, the possibility of finding something interesting online, or the sugar and fat hit from junk food. As James Clear outlines in Atomic Habits, our environment is engineered to constantly trigger these dopamine hits. Your brain gets hooked on the promise of a quick fix, mistaking that flutter of anticipation, wanting, for genuine satisfaction, liking. So faced with a difficult task that offers delayed rewards, your brain naturally gravitates towards the easy dopamine hit of distraction. Finally, our clever brains use psychological loopholes to justify giving in. One common one McGonigal discusses is moral licensing. Ever done something productive, even small, and then felt like you earned a long break or a treat that sabotages your bigger goals? That's moral licensing. Feeling good gives us permission to be bad. We convince ourselves it's okay to procrastinate now because we'll definitely be super productive tomorrow. Spoiler, tomorrow often looks a lot like today. So, if willpower is like a muscle that gets tired, and our brains are easily hijacked by stress and dopamine, relying solely on brute force to overcome procrastination is like trying to push that giant boulder uphill every single day. It's exhausting, and often, it just doesn't work long-term. The secret weapon used by people who consistently beat procrastination isn't superhuman willpower. It's building smarter systems. As James Clear emphasizes in Atomic Habits, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Instead of trying to find motivation every single time, we need to engineer our lives so that taking action is the path of least resistance. How do we do that? First, design your environment for success. Remember how dopamine chases visible cues? Use that. Make the cues for your desired habits obvious and the cues for procrastination invisible. Want to exercise? Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Need to practice guitar? Put it on a stand in the middle of your living room, not hidden in the closet. Struggling with phone distractions? Put your phone in another room or a drawer when you need to focus. Reduce the friction, the number of steps, between you and the good habit, and increase the friction for the bad ones. Make doing the right thing the easiest thing. Second, master the art of starting small. Often, the hardest part of any task is just getting started. Overcoming that initial inertia, that activation energy. This is where James Clear's brilliant 2-minute rule comes in. The rule states, when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. The idea isn't to only do 2 minutes forever, but to make starting so ridiculously easy that you can't say no. Want to read more? Goal becomes, read 1 page. Want to exercise for 30 minutes? Goal becomes, put on my running shoes. Need to write a report? Goal becomes, open the document and write 1 sentence. This works because it bypasses the overwhelm, that fear we talked about with Dr. Fiore. It shifts your focus from the daunting endpoint, finish this huge project, to an incredibly easy starting point. And often, once you've started, momentum takes over. As Brian Tracy also implies in Eat That Frog, the focus should be on launching into the task. The 2-minute rule is your launch pad. Some experts, like Dr. Fiore, even suggest counterintuitive strategies like scheduling your guilt-free play and breaks first using something called the unschedule. Knowing you have guaranteed enjoyable things coming up can actually reduce the resentment towards work and make it easier to focus during your work blocks, because work doesn't feel like it's consuming your entire life. You can combine these ideas. Stack habits. After I pour my coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute. Bundle temptations. I will only listen to my favorite podcast while doing chores. The goal is always to make the desired behavior more obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. Building these systems, optimizing your environment, shrinking the start, focusing on process, maybe even scheduling fun first, fundamentally changes the game. It shifts procrastination from being the easy default to being the harder choice. You're no longer relying on a tired willpower muscle. You're riding the smooth rails of a well-designed system. But even with the best system, you still need to show up and execute day after day. What specific tactics and, crucially, what mindset do we need to deploy in the moment to win that daily battle against resistance and get our most important work done? Let's start with a classic, incredibly effective tactic popularized by Brian Tracy: Eat That Frog. Your frog is your single most important, highest impact task for the day, the one you're most likely to procrastinate on precisely because it's significant. The rule is simple. Eat that frog first thing in the morning, before you do anything else. Don't check email, don't get lost in minor tasks. Tackle the big, ugly frog head on. Why does this work? Because completing your most crucial task provides a huge surge of energy, satisfaction, and momentum that carries you through the rest of the day. Techniques like the 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle, suggesting that 20% of your efforts produce 80% of your results, or the ABCDE method, a system for prioritizing tasks by assigning levels A, most important, through E, eliminate, focusing on the most critical A1 task, are tools to help you identify that frog. But the core tactic is eat it first. But tackling that frog daily requires more than just a tactic. It requires a mindset shift. Stephen Pressfield, in The War of Art, draws a powerful distinction between the amateur and the professional. The amateur waits for inspiration, works only when they feel like it, gets easily derailed by fear or criticism, and often over-identifies with their work. The professional? They show up every single day, rain or shine, inspired or not. They treat their work like a job, understanding that consistency is key. They focus on the process of doing the work, not just the outcome or the applause. They know fear and resistance are part of the game, but they act anyway. They don't make excuses. This professional mindset isn't about being cold or unfeeling. It's about respect for the work and the discipline required to bring it into the world. And what does the professional do every day? They start. Echoing Dr. Fiore's insights from the Now Habit, the professional understands that the victory often lies simply in beginning, shifting your mental target from the overwhelming "I must finish this massive thing" to the manageable "when can I start?" or "I choose to start on one small step now," is a core professional habit. But what happens when you don't eat the frog? When resistance wins around and you slip up? This is where the amateur often spirals. Dr. Kelly McGonigal describes the destructive "what the hell" effect. You procrastinate, feel guilty and stressed, and then, to escape those bad feelings, you procrastinate even more. Might as well waste the whole day now. The professional and the person building lasting change counters this with self-compassion. Instead of beating yourself up, you acknowledge the slip-up without judgment, recognize it's human, and gently redirect yourself back to the plan. Research shows self-forgiveness actually reduces future procrastination, while guilt fuels it. This ties into building psychological safety, as emphasized by Dr. Fiore. When you separate your inherent self-worth from your immediate performance, mistakes become less terrifying. You lower the stakes. Knowing that failing at a task doesn't make you a failure makes it much less scary to start in the first place. So winning the daily battle involves this powerful combination. Use sharp tactics like eat that frog to prioritize and execute. Cultivate the mindset of a professional, showing up consistently, focusing on the work, acting despite fear. And crucially, arm yourself with self-compassion and psychological safety to handle setbacks resiliently, breaking the cycle of guilt and getting back on track quickly. It's not about being perfect. It's about persistence, smart strategies, and understanding your own internal landscape. Procrastination isn't a character flaw you just have to live with. It's a complex human response, a coping mechanism often born out of fear and fueled by our biology. You can finally beat it, not by white-knuckling it with brute force willpower, but through understanding these deeper reasons, building supportive systems, using smart tactics, and treating yourself with kindness when you inevitably stumble. You can break the cycle. Now go eat that frog, or at least take the first tiny bite. If this video helped you understand procrastination in a new way, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And if you want more deep dives into the science of productivity, habit formation, and building a focused life, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss future videos.